All right, let's just jump straight into it. Today, we're going to explore the secret emotional world that's hiding behind one of the most common things on Earth, just plain old salt.
I want you to think about this for a second. What if that stuff you sprinkle on your food, simple table salt, actually held the key to understanding someone's silent grief? You know, the kind of person who locks all their pain away deep down inside? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. This is the story of Natrum Muriaticum, which is, just the homeopathic name for common table salt. And when you understand the personality picture that goes with it, wow, it gives you this incredible lens to look at a really specific, really profound kind of human experience. Okay, so to really get this, we have to start with this central idea, this metaphor. It's sometimes called the doctrine of salt, and it's all about this fascinating duality that really, it shapes everything for this person. So, check this out. It all comes down to this core conflict. On one side, you've got salt being absolutely essential, right? A recipe without salt is just bland. It's tasteless. And that gives rise to this feeling of self-importance, a real dignity, this sense of I'm irreplaceable. But then, what happens if you go too far? You add too much salt, and boom, the whole dish is rejected, it's ruined. And that creates this deep, deep fear of being too much, too emotional, too intense, too salty. And the ultimate fear? Being rejected because of it. So you've got this constant war going on inside. I am essential. I have to hold on to my dignity. But at the same time, if I show too much of who I really am, I'm going to get pushed away. And that very conflict right there becomes the blueprint for their whole personality. So where does this all come from? How does a person get this way? Well, like any good story, there's an origin. And for this one, it pretty much always starts with a really deep emotional wound that's never been talked about. And look, we're not talking about some small insult here. This is a major emotional hit. A grief, a hurt that's just so painful, the only way they can deal with it is to lock it up tight and throw away the key. It never gets processed. That's what we mean by silent grief. And the things that cause this wound, they're often things any of us could go through. But for this person, it's felt with this incredible intensity. Stuff like a really bad breakup, a huge disappointment or humiliation, losing someone you love. A lot of the time, this pattern actually starts way back in childhood, with that feeling that you just weren't loved unconditionally, So instead of letting that hurt go, they hold on to it. They bottle it up, and it just plays on a loop in their mind, over and over again. It's like a movie they can't stop watching. And because of that, they can dwell on these old hurts for years. I mean, sometimes for their entire lives. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? They never forget, they never forgive. It perfectly captures how they relate to the past. That pain becomes a part of them, and letting it go feels almost impossible. Now, they might not be out for revenge or anything, but on the inside, they remember. And forgiveness does not come easy. Okay, so you've got this deep wound. What's the natural response? Well, a really powerful defense mechanism kicks in. They start to build a wall. And this isn't just some flimsy fence. We're talking a solid wall of emotional protection, built one brick at a time. The whole point is to make sure they never, ever have to feel that kind of vulnerability again. The logic is simple. The last time I opened up, I got crushed. Never again. So what does lies behind the wall look like? Well, it's pretty reserved. They become introverted, even secretive. To everyone else, they can seem totally calm, stoic, maybe even a little cold or distant. And they get really good at putting on a brave face, smiling and insisting everything's fine, when deep down, they're incredibly unhappy. And all of this often shows up as perfectionism. It makes sense, right? That original wound made them feel like something was wrong with them, like they weren't good enough. So how do they fight that feeling? By trying to be perfect at everything they do. The standards they set for themselves are just ridiculously high, and it's all driven by that nagging, deep down feeling of, I'm not enough. Okay, now we get to what is maybe the most fascinating and honestly the most paradoxical part of this whole picture. It's how they react when you try to offer them sympathy. I mean, it's a fair question, isn't it? If someone is hurting this much, wouldn't they want a shoulder to cry on? You'd think they would welcome a little comfort. But no. For this personality type, it is the absolute opposite. Trying to console them actually makes them angry. It makes them feel worse. Let's walk through the psychology of this because it's really interesting. First, you have the deep hurt. Then they build that wall we talked about. And that wall is all about protecting their dignity and staying in control. So when you come along and offer sympathy, they don't hear, I care about you. They hear, "I feel sorry for you." They hear pity. And pity is like a wrecking ball to their dignity. It feels like you're trying to breach the wall to get inside, and that just makes them feel exposed and even more vulnerable. And that is why they are masters of crying only when they're alone. You might see their eyes well up, but they will fight like hell to not let a single tear fall in front of you. Because to them, crying in public is the ultimate sign of weakness, a complete loss of that control they've worked so hard to maintain. All right, so let's tie all of this together now and look at the whole picture. Because, and this is so important, this emotional state doesn't just live in their head, it actually starts to show up in their physical body. This really lays it all out perfectly. You start with that core emotion, silent grief, always tied back to some kind of rejection. The mind's response? Build that emotional wall, become an introvert, a perfectionist. But then, look at how the body responds. You get this intense craving for salt. Ironic, right? Headaches that get way worse in the sun. And this is a classic one, often a little vertical crack right in the middle of their lower lip. You see, it's a complete blueprint, mind and body. What this shows us so clearly is that connection between the mind and the body. It's like the body starts speaking the truth that the mind is trying so hard to suppress. All those held-in emotions create this backlog, and eventually it can bubble up as all sorts of physical issues. And that really just leaves us with one final big question to chew on. When you see a portrait this detailed, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our own physical stuff, our headaches, our weird cravings, our aches and pains, how much of that is just our own emotions trying to tell a story we're not listening to? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this one.